Now let's talk about what it means to be a missionary. A lot of times when we hear about missions or missionaries, we picture some guy going to some remote village and sharing the gospel with them. And there is that. But there's a lot more to mission service. And it kind of became a joke that Pedro became my dad, or mi papa. So whenever Pedro treated me like a kid, I'd say, si papa. Well, that was all fun and games, but it did come back to bite me, as you'll see later. Back at the church, Dennis preached the sermon. But the really cool thing, probably the coolest thing of the trip, happened after the service.
Hey YouTube, I got a bit of a different video for you this morning. You may have noticed from the footage that you saw before this that this is not going to be one of my typical sermons from the Shasta Valley Christian Fellowship. I got a text around the beginning of January asking me if I wanted to go on a mission trip. And I didn't have the money at the time. I told them that I probably wouldn't be able to go, and they asked me if that was the only reason. I said, yeah. So they got back to me and said they had the money and they were going to pay my way. So this is going to be an interesting video. You actually know more at this point about what it's about than I do. I'm just going to bring you along for the ride and we'll see how this plays out. I haven't even started packing yet. In fact, I got to shed my winter coat too. Maybe we'll do that first. And now that that's done, wow, I've been at that too many times. I'm running out of summer coat too. Anyway, let's get packing and get this show on the road. If it fits, it ships. So I don't remember exactly what all I told you guys when I was doing the intro. On our way south, I'm pretty sure I told you we were doing a mission trip to Mexico. But I don't know exactly what this video is going to turn into. And a large part of that is because it's the way the Holy Spirit works, right? When you're being led by the Holy Spirit, a lot of time it's just go here, and that's what you do. He doesn't give you a lot of details. He doesn't tell you what things are going to happen or anything like that. In this case, we are going to Guaymas, Mexico. I'll be stopping in Madera tonight and meeting up with the rest of the team there, and we'll all be traveling together down in one vehicle tomorrow.
So on these long drives, I spend a lot of time praying and just thinking about things. It doesn't matter if I'm in my car or truck or whatever. And on this particular drive, I'm pondering Jesus' temptations in Luke chapter 4. That's where Jesus was in the desert for 40 days, and Satan tries to tempt him during those 40 days, but at the end of the 40 days, he tries like 3 last-ditch efforts to get Jesus to sin. And they seem strange. Take the first one, for instance. Jesus is hungry, and Satan tells Jesus to take a stone and turn it into a loaf of bread. So what is sinful about that? I mean, turning the stone into bread would not be sinful for Jesus to do it. He turned the water into wine, and there was an issue with that. Eating something he miraculously made, having nothing wrong with that either. He fed thousands miraculously twice. So what exactly was the temptation there? If you got an idea, let me know in the comments, and we'll revisit this later.
Morning, YouTube. This is the start of day 2 of this mission trip. We are at the Assembly of God Church in Madera, California. Pastor Dennis is here. He let me sleep here last night, which is very nice. We're waiting on Pedro to show up, and it sounds like our 4th person had to drop out at the last minute, so it'll just be 3 of us going down this time.
I didn't get a lot of videoing done today. I did most of the driving for a while, and then I switched off with Dennis so I could take care of some business. I think he took us on into Tucson.
Good morning, guys. We're starting day 3. We're in Tucson, Arizona. I stopped here for the night. Decided not to drive straight through. It would have kind of messed up with things on the other end when we get to Guaymas. Let's see what today has. I'm still pondering that question that I had. Hopefully we'll have an answer for you here before too long, at least by the end of the video.
Well, I had woken up quite a bit earlier than I needed to. We're supposed to meet out the truck at a certain time, and I was up way early. But I couldn't get back to sleep, so I decided just to read my Bible for a while to pass the time. I'm sorry about the light on top of my head. That was not intentional.
Yeah, we're in Green Valley, probably about an hour from the border yet. The sky is still looking kind of stormy. We stopped at Mama's Kitchen for breakfast. Not a bad little place. Food was reasonable price and tasted good. Lots of staff on hand, so anyway. This is our ride for this trip. This is Pedro's pickup. It's a Dodge. It's got a diesel engine in it. It's pretty good on fuel. We're getting about 21, 22 miles to the gallon average.
Well, before long, we were in Nogales, Mexico. Usually I like to skip right through the border towns. I don't like to spend a lot of time there.
Hopefully we don't meet anybody.
But
Let's get kind of
Pedro had a box he needed to deliver. And we took a little detour. We'll see with that.
Pedro, are you misguiding me?
Oh, look at this. It's now safe. Turn that way over there.
Okay, so go up here and turn left.
And go back. Hostia. He doesn't show anything. He doesn't say.
No?
Over there it shows the road. Over there, that was the road. I see it. Here goes.
Alright, turning left. Let's see what happens. Might have to use a full drive on this one. Kind of reminds me of San Francisco.
61. You cannot go up.
Yeah. See somebody's house there. This could get tight right here. I can make it.
I think right here.
I think left here.
Or left here. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I just gotta get through these two cars and I can make a left. There we go. Yeah, I got back a little bit. It's the adventure of it all, right? We didn't want to have a boring trip down there.
Well, the detour took us about 15 minutes, but eventually I was able to find my way back to the highway. And we found the bus station we were looking for, so Pedro could mail off his package. This is one of several checkpoints that we had to pass through. Some are by the police, different police agencies, some by the military. But usually, if you don't look too suspicious, they just wave you on through. One of our favorite places to eat on the way down is in Hermosillo. It's a little, I'm not really sure what you call it, carne asada shop. The way I remember it is it's right next to that pink gas station that you see. It's on the south end of Hermosillo. But you go in, you pick out what meat you want, and they cook it right there in front of you. It's good stuff.
Whatever do you like, but this is different.
So after we had our fill of carne asada, it was a straight shot to Guaymas. We got to the Bethel church, just there finishing up their midweek service. We each got up and gave a quick little presentation and just talking about who we were and greeted everybody. After this meeting, we talked about going and get something to eat with a couple of the pastors. And Pedro told me, because I was having a hard time deciding, Pedro says, you can either go with us and eat or you can go to bed, like I was his kid. So I said, okay, Dad. And one of the pastors understood what I said, and he chuckled and translated it to his friends that I said, mi papa. And it kind of became a joke that Pedro became my dad, or mi papa. So whenever Pedro treated me like a kid, I'd say, si papa. Well, that was all fun and games, but it did come back to bite me, as you'll see later.
Good morning. I think we're on day 4 now. And if it looks like I'm staying in a classroom, that's because I am. I'm going to be staying at the Bethel Church in Guaymas. They're nice enough to let me use their classroom. Motels are cheap here. They're like $40 a night, but that's $40 I can use to help out some church down here or some people or something. So I'm choosing to go the cheap route and stay in the classroom.
I woke up to a beautiful sunrise that first morning, and I decided to try and get a little bit of drone footage of the church campus while everyone was still in bed or not there yet. It was a little bit bigger than my little mini drone could handle. El Jairo showed up early that morning to help us get an itinerary out. It was going to be a pretty easy schedule, just 3 churches apiece while we're there. Then the guys were curious about my little drone, so I decided to give them an example of it, and I did a little test flight. Only the test flight didn't go so well. I think it was right around here that I realized I had lost control of the drone, and it decided to go on a tour of Guaymas without me. This actually worked to my favor, though, as I was going to be speaking on prayer that night, and I used this as an example with the drone taking off and not listening to what was going on. It kept getting further and further away, kind of like when we don't listen to God, we end up drifting further and further away from Him. This is Heidel. We're at his church, Casa de Dios in Guaymas. And one of the issues we're having on this trip is with our interpreters or translators. There just aren't that many of them. So I had to team up with Pedro here. He's going to be interpreting for me, and then he's going to be doing another service here later. And I'll leave with Dennis. Notice the little guy behind the podium there. This is very common in the Mexican churches I've seen, where they start the kids off really young leading worship. I've seen kids as young as 4 years old banging on a drum set next to their family during the worship sessions.
Cuando venimos a la iglesia.
Amen. We celebrate the presence of God.
Nosotros celebramos la palabra de Dios y la presencia
We
de
sense
Dios.
the presence of God inside of our heart.
Y nosotros celebramos que tenemos la presencia de Dios en nuestro corazón.
And when we come together,
Y cuando venimos nosotros juntos,
it's even more special.
es más especial todavía.
This is Pastor Dennis and his translator Anse. Anse is the daughter of Pastor Noah, who is the pastor of the church that we're staying at, Bethel in Guaymas. They work very well together. Pastor Dennis has actually known Ansei's father since he was just a little boy. So he's known this family for many, many years. They're going to work together one more time after this, and that's probably going to be it, because Ansei is getting married this year, and she'll be leaving the area. So we do thank her for all of her help, and we wish her many blessings in her marriage, and pray that she has a happy life. Well, Friday morning finds us back at the church in Bethel. I hadn't gained much exercise lately, so I decided to take a little walk. My first stop was the market. I was going to try and find some souvenirs for the kids, but nothing was open yet. It seems at 9 in the morning the town is still waking up. This is Mexico. Or it might be because there was a carnival in town. It was going on for, I think, 5 days. It made the town really busy at night. Sizable one, too. It took up a large part of the waterfront. But from my trip to the market, I walked over to the waterfront and decided just to take a walk along there. So this was a great time just to be alone with God and pray and meditate for a while. I think this might be a good time also to revisit the question I was pondering on the way down about what really actually was the temptation that Jesus was experiencing. I think it comes down to something very, very subtle. See, Satan will take a need that you have. It could be an actual need, or maybe even just be a perceived need that you have. And he'll kind of blow that up in your eyes where it seems really big to you. And then after he gets to that point, he says, well, God doesn't care about this need because he's not meeting it. At that point, you're getting very close to losing faith that God will provide for you, or losing your trust in God. And that's what Satan's after. He's wanting you to turn your faith away from God. In this case, he's wanting Jesus to focus on himself and his hunger. And if Jesus had done what Satan said, he would have been following Satan's leading, which would have put Satan, in a way, in charge over him. So the temptation wasn't really in the act of doing the things, but where Jesus' heart was on the issue. We should never lose faith. Well, breakfast and lunch were served at the church that we were staying at. Here, Pastor Noah is cooking up one of their local specialties, which is carne asada. All the meals were really good, and we gave the pastor and his wife money to cover the groceries. That afternoon, Dennis and I were invited to Pastor Daniel's church, Monte Sinai, or Mount Sinai. He wanted me to speak there, but he wanted to show Dennis the construction of the new church that they're building. Apparently Dennis has been helping them with that, and they wanted to show him the progress. Since we, again, found ourselves without a translator, Pedro had to come with us. And I was honored that they asked me to speak. I really was not expecting it.
Hermano, esto es el predicador de esta ocasión. Bienvenido. Gracias.
Hermano Scott va a ser el predicador hoy. Está bien, Scott. Puedes comenzar. You can start.
I have a lot of fun driving.
Yo me gozo mucho manejando.
It's my job when I'm not preaching, I drive trucks.
Es mi trabajo que hago cuando yo no predico y pues manejo. Yo manejo un troque.
I like to drive cars. I like to drive pretty much anything that has a
Me
motor.
gusta manejar carros, me gusta manejar cualquier cosa que tenga un motor.
And I like to drive fast.
Me gusta manejar rápido.
Many tickets.
Muchos tickets me han dado.
The first time I drove in Mexico,
La primera vez que vine a México,
I learned what a topo was.
yo aprendí lo que era un tope.
The first one I hit doing about 120 kilometers an hour.
El primero que lo crucé era como 100 y algo de kilómetros por hora.
I'm pretty sure all four wheels were in the air.
Y estoy seguro que las 4 llantas se subieron al aire.
It was my wife's car.
Era el carro de mi esposa.
She was with me.
Ella estaba con él.
She wasn't happy.
Ella no estaba feliz.
But I learned very quickly to look for the signs.
Pero aprendí bien rápido a estar mirando por los anuncios que dijeran topes.
I see a sign that says reductor de la velocidad, and I slowed way down.
Miraba un rótulo que decía disminuya su velocidad y yo la disminuía casi todo.
The reason I'm telling you that story
La razón por qué le digo yo esta historia.
is I'm going to talk about temptation and sin tonight.
Voy a hablar de la tentación y el pecado esta noche.
I want you to know that it does not come from a place of judgment.
Quiero que sepa que no veo yo a juzgar a nadie,
It comes from a place of love and compassion.
sino más bien es una plataforma de amor y compasión.
I just want to show you the signs to look for.
Quiero que nomás pueda ver los anuncios que hay sobre ello.
When the devil is setting up his traps.
Cuando Satanás está poniendo trampas.
After this service, Pedro had to go directly to another church, La Salvacion, and give a message. Dennis and I spent the rest of the evening with Pastor Daniel and his family. Now let's talk about what it means to be a missionary. A lot of times when we hear about missions or missionaries, we picture some guy going to some remote village and sharing the gospel with them. And there is that. But there's a lot more to mission service. As St. Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words. A lot of times, missions work is just seeing a need and helping somebody with it, as we're doing here with this headlight. I noticed when the car came in that the headlight was out and they didn't know how to fix it, so I told them to go get the bulb and I'd fix it for them. What I want you to see here, though, is that there's more to missions than just preaching from a pulpit or trying to reach some lost village. If you have any kind of a skill, you're probably needed in the mission field. I've been on mission trips in the past where they needed a welder, so I put on a helmet and went to work. It was on this same trip to Vicente Guerrero that I noticed a bunch of the kids had runny noses and were coughing. So I asked the adults of the place what was going on, and they said the kids were sleeping on the ground where all the chickens and different animals were running back and forth. So I went home, rounded up some friends, and we went back and built bunk beds to get the kids up off the ground. If you notice, this one in particular is built for a cardboard house. We didn't care where the people were living, we just wanted to get the kids helped. Getting back to the current mission trip, since we didn't have anything scheduled for Saturday, we decided to host a lunch for all the local pastors and their families. Pedro and I did all the cooking.
But then he came back and
So the lunch was going well. Dennis had volunteered to give a message. And do you remember how I talked about my joke with Pedro being my dad came back to haunt me? This is where it started.
And he looked at him again. And God said 3 words. Three words in the Hebrew language. And when he talked about man, he said, alone, not good. God looked at man and he said, by himself. Whenever you're ready.
Dios, y dicen, No, bueno, no, no.
I'm not sure if you heard what Pedro said there because it was kind of drowned out. But he basically told me that it wasn't good for me to be alone. Those of you that know me know that my wife Vicky passed away almost 3 years ago, and I've been single ever since. And I think Pedro is taking it upon himself to try and remedy that. I don't have it recorded because I was speaking at the time, but I got it up next after Dennis. And I was just going to do a quick little intro. And I wasn't really expecting to do it, actually. So I didn't know what I was going to say. And I just got up and said, "Hi, my name is Scott." And Pedro starts saying something well beyond what I said. I heard something in there about a spouse. So I spun around and said, "What did you say?" And the whole room just erupted in laughter. So I figured, whatever it was funny. I'll just let it go. But apparently, Pedro told them that he was trying to find me a wife. That's right. My Papa Pedro, this is where it's coming back to bite me, is trying to marry me off.
Hey,
Scott.
And the joke gets better. After the dinner, Pedro has me come sit down by him. Apparently, he has been arranging a marriage for me to another pastor's daughter. And this isn't the end of it. There's more to this, but we'll revisit it later. In an unrelated note, you see those balloons behind Dennis? The little boy asked if he could have one. So Noah gave him the whole string. Made for one happy little boy.
Scott, blessed be your name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name.
Sunday morning finds us at Pastor Anthony Cruz's church, Harvel. I probably just ruined that name, but I'll spell it out on the screen for you. And Tony likes American worship music, apparently. So Tony provided us with our own translator, actually me. Her name is Maricela, and she did an excellent job. I'd never worked with her before, and so the whole thing went really well. One thing I try doing when I'm preaching in Mexico is to bring in elements from the mission trip itself to make the message more current and relevant to everybody. So I start off with the intro to this one, talking about how the trip has made my kids more independent. And with that independence comes making their own decisions and making right and wrong decisions.
I realized this morning that this missionary trip has actually had a very positive effect on my kids at home.
Estaba analizando esta mañana que este viaje misionero ha tenido efectos muy buenos y positivos en nuestra vida.
For many years now, I've been trying to get them to make their own decisions.
Y por mucho tiempo había estado tratando de tomar esta decisión.
My son is an adult and he still asks me for permission when he wants to do something.
Mi hijo es adulto y aún así me sigue pidiendo permiso para hacer algunas cosas.
And I tell him, you're an adult now, you don't need my permission.
Y le digo, tú eres adulto, pero no necesitas pedirme permiso.
And yesterday I found out that he and my daughter went and cut a load of firewood for the house by themselves.
Y ayer me di cuenta que mi hijo y mi hija han ido a vivir a una parte ya lejos de mí.
This was the first time that he'd ever driven my truck by himself.
Y esta es la primera vez que no están conmigo en un viaje.
They didn't ask for permission first.
Y ya no me pidieron permiso.
I told him I was very proud of him.
Y le dije, no hay problema.
And this morning my daughter sends me a picture of some muffins that she had made.
Y esta mañana me mandó una foto de unos muffins, como unos cupcakes que hizo esta mañana.
She said they were a late birthday present for her brother.
Y dijo que era un regalo de cumpleaños para su hermano.
My daughter has never cooked anything by herself before.
Y mi hija, de hecho, nunca había cocinado antes.
And this morning my sister sends me a message.
Y ahora esta mañana mi hermana me mandó un mensaje.
She saw the car going out and she thought they were going to church by themselves.
Y miró que llegaron ellos a la iglesia por ellos mismos.
My son is 21 and my daughter is 13.
Mi hijo tiene 21 y mi hija tiene 13.
And
And I am a very proud dad this morning.
Y me sentí muy orgulloso esta mañana.
But also very scared.
Pero también a la vez un poco asustado.
Because if they're making their own decisions, they might make bad decisions.
Porque también están tomando sus decisiones y podrían ser a lo mejor malas decisiones.
Every day, frequently, we make decisions.
Nosotros día a día frecuentemente tomamos decisiones.
Some might be very small.
Y de alguna manera pequeña
Some can be very big.
se convierte en algo muy grande.
I also threw in the story about Pedro trying to get me married the day before.
I think he said he was trying to find me a wife.
Y creo que él estaba tratando de buscarme una esposa.
Mi papa was trying to marry me off.
Mi padre está tratando de casarme.
After the dinner,
Después de la comida,
he had me sit down with a bunch of ladies.
estábamos sentados con un montón de muchachas.
Apparently, he had found my mate.
Y aparentemente ya tiene una para mí.
A little voice in my head said, "Be very careful what you say here.
Y una voz en mi cabeza dijo, hey, ten mucho cuidado de lo que vas a hablar aquí.
I might end up marrying someone I don't even know."
Porque puedo salir casado en este momento.
And no, I am not getting married.
No, claro que no, estoy jugando.
But let's look at how to make good decisions. Another thing we can do that Jesus had done
Otra de las cosas que podemos hacer y que Jesús hizo
is to be full of the Spirit.
es seguir al Espíritu.
We have a Native American story where I'm from.
Conocemos una historia de un americano.
This old Indian is talking to a young brave.
Este indio está hablándole a una persona que es valiente
And he tells him, "There's two wolves fighting inside of you."
y le dice, mira, hay dos paredes delante de ti.
And the brave goes, "Well, which one's going to win?"
Y le dice, ¿con cuál de las dos tú quieres pelear?
The old man says, "Whichever one you're feeding."
¿Con la que todo el mundo está escogiendo?
So for us, if we are feeding the flesh will win against the spirit.
Y realmente habla de que lo que alimentemos más es lo que alimenta el espíritu.
If we are feeding the spirit
Si estamos alimentando nuestro
will
espíritu,
win against the flesh.
el espíritu es el que nos ayudará a derribar toda barrera.
We feed the spirit by praying and by reading our Bible
Si lo alimentamos de fortaleza y de leer la Biblia,
and going to church. So what happens when we make a bad decision?
¿y qué pasa cuando tomamos malas decisiones?
I told you that my son made the decision to go get firewood.
Ya les expliqué que mi hijo tomó esa decisión esta mañana.
The reason I found out about it
Y la razón por la que yo creo que lo hizo
is because he called me to tell me that he had damaged my truck in the process.
y me avisó que lo había hecho para sentirme yo también orgulloso.
He hit a fence when he was trying to back into our house.
Él tiene una barca por ahí atrás de mi casa.
But I was still proud of him that he was making his own decisions.
Y me dijo que había tenido un problema, pero estoy orgulloso de él porque aún así él tomó decisiones
And he owned up to his mistake.
y sabe cuáles fueron los errores.
He didn't try to blame it on his sister or a dog or something else.
No trató de culpar ni a su hermana ni a su perrito por el daño que hubo en la barba.
He said, "Dad, I'm sorry I damaged the truck."
Y le dice, papá, lo siento, yo le hice daño a la camioneta.
We can approach God in the same manner.
Podemos compararnos en este momento.
If we make a bad decision,
Que si tomamos malas decisiones,
we can say, "God, I'm sorry I made a mistake."
le podemos decir entonces, Señor, perdóname, fue un error.
God loves you much more than I love my son.
Dios te ama muchísimo más de lo que ama a mi hijo.
And it will make him happy that you are repenting of your mistake.
Y realmente se siente feliz cuando tú te estás arrepintiendo de tus errores.
So I guess that's what this message is about making good decisions. And if you do make the wrong decisions, don't be afraid to go to God.
Pues básicamente de esto es que quiero que entiendas que es el mensaje de tomar buenas decisiones, pero de también que cuando tomes las malas decisiones seas suficientemente valiente para ir con Dios.
And always remember that you can pray to God in your decisions.
Puedes pedir la misericordia de Dios y la guía para tus decisiones.
I was was praying a lot yesterday when Pedro tried to get me married.
Estaba orando mucho ayer cuando Pedro estaba tratando de conseguir una esposa.
I'm thankful God said, no, you do not need to get married.
Y le dije, por favor, dime, Señor, que no quieres que yo me case.
I'm very thankful to Maricela for this and after the service. You remember how I told you that joke about me getting married wasn't done yet? Well, the pastor, who was the father, invited me out to lunch. I don't have any video of this, I'm sorry. But after he invited me out, I found out that it was at his daughter's house. And yes, the same daughter that apparently arranged marriage was going for. And at this point, I am really beginning to wonder if it was still a joke. But Maricela went with me and her husband. And the family was very nice. And they did crack a lot of jokes as the kids were coming in. They were saying, oh, is this going to be our new papa? And so we had a lot of fun with it. But I was very thankful that Maricela and her husband were there and were able to get me out of there later. I'm not going to give you the names of the family because I don't want to cause them embarrassment. But anyway, thanks again, Maricela. Well, that evening, the translator picked us up and took us out to La Travisata. But before we actually started the service, the pastor wanted to take us out to, I think it was Empalme, to show us a little church that was in need. What you're seeing here is a roof that Dennis's dad had put on a church over 46 years ago. And it's definitely in need of help. It was wood framed, and over time, moisture's gotten in there and it rotted out the slats that were running lengthwise on the roof. They just want to know what our thoughts were on it, and we advised them to replace the rotten slats, but the trusses were okay. So that'd be the cheapest way to go, but if they had the money, it'd be better to replace all the trusses and everything with steel. Back at the church, Dennis preached the sermon. But the really cool thing, probably the coolest thing of the trip, happened after the service. They invited us for dinner. It seems like everywhere you go down there, they invite you out for food. But they invited us for dinner, and I was able to snap this photo. So what's so special about this photo? Well, I have been looking for this girl for almost 7 years. Why is that? Well, this is her the last time I saw her. Again, okay, it's a kid, so what's so special about her? She is literally a walking miracle. The last time I saw her, her father had brought her up to us to pray for her. He pulled her little shoe and sock off, and when I looked at her foot, it looked like it had been badly dislocated. But exactly what was going on is she was born without any kind of bones around her ankles. And so it was just like flesh and meat there. There was nothing rigid to hold her foot where it needed to be. And we prayed for her. And at that point, I was actually having a hard time with God about this. And I went off, stood by a wall, and just started praying that, we were giving these people false hope and this wasn't right. And then a few minutes later, her father brings her back over to me, pulls down her sock again, all excited, and says, look. And I looked at it, and the foot looked normal. There were like the ankle bones and stuff that you'd see with a normal foot. And she had been healed. You can tell by the look on her face in the picture that she's really excited. So I posted a little thing on Facebook about how I witnessed this miracle. And I actually caught some flack from it. And even since then, there's people who say, no, this couldn't have happened. Well, I got the picture here of the girl 7 years later, completely healed, to show that it did happen. Now, if you wanted to try and tell me that God doesn't work that way, can you explain to me how this girl's little bones grew within minutes? Bones don't do that. And just so we're clear, I'm not claiming to be some miracle worker or faith healer. God's the one that healed that little girl. I just got to witness it. After having a good week of catching up with old friends and helping out who we could, it was time to return home.
Hey guys, it's just before midnight on Monday. We left Guaymas this morning about 5 o'clock, and we are in Madera. Pastor Dennis's church is a little ways down the road. We'll be disbanding a little group here very shortly and going our separate ways.
After leaving Madera, I continued driving till I got north of Sacramento, and I found a rest area to sleep in for a while. After that, it was a pretty easy ride the rest of the way home. But here's a question for you. What would have happened if I did not go on this trip? If I just never left in the first place? And of course, everything you saw in this video wouldn't have happened, and some stuff that I didn't get recorded. You know how I said a few times that we were having a problem finding translators? Well, part of that was because a translator that we've used in the past passed away about 3 weeks before we got down there. Now, she herself not been well enough to be our translator for a couple of years. But her son was able to help us. He also made a pretty good translator. But on this trip, I don't think he was feeling up to it, which is understandable. I didn't try to push him at all. Charles Thomas Studd wrote a rather famous poem about life, and it goes like this. 2 little lines I heard one day, traveling along life's busy way, bringing conviction to my heart, and from my mind would not depart. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Only one life, yes, only one. Soon will its fleeting hours be done. Then in that day my Lord to meet, and stand before his judgment seat. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Only one life, the still small voice gently pleads for a better choice, bidding me selfish aims to leave, and to God's holy will to cleave. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Only one life, a few brief years, each with its burdens, hopes, and fears, each with its clays I must fulfill, living for herself or in his will. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. When this bright world would tempt me sore, when Satan would a victory score, when self would seek to have its way, then help me, Lord, with joy to say, only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Give me, Father, a purpose deep, in joy or sorrow thy word to keep, faithful and true, whate'er the strife, pleasing thee in my daily life. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Oh, let my love with fervor burn, and from the world now let me turn, living for thee and thee alone, bringing thee pleasure on thy throne. Only one life, 'twill soon be past, and only what's done for Christ will last. Only one life, yes, only one. Now let me say, thy will be done. And when at last I hear the call, I know I'll say 'twas worth it all. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. 2 Corinthians 4:18 says, So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So if you're focused in life on things or making about you, that's the stuff that's seen. This car that I'm driving is temporary. In fact, my life is temporary. Eventually it'll be gone. And what will be left? Well, anything that's done for Christ will be left. So by not going to Mexico, I would have missed out on a chance to serve Christ. God called me to Mexico. Where is he calling you to? Is he calling you to help your neighbor? Is he calling you to foreign missions? Is he calling you to help out the kid that you saw? Or is it a homeless person? Whatever it is that God's calling you to, you should go do it. Alma did what God called her to, and she helped us touch a lot of people. And I know that she's rewarded now because of it.